Hello there, if you're hearing this right now. Maybe you're an Aries soul, or perhaps you've once crossed paths with one. Either way, I believe you're exactly where you need to be tonight. A space where we don't just listen with our ears, but with the cracked part of our hearts that still remembers how to feel. Because the story of Aries was never about rage, never about screaming to be heard. It has always been about something quieter, something deeper, something called rising. You know, people often think Aries is all fire, loud, blazing, always on the edge of explosion. But there's a truth rarely spoken aloud. The strongest flames are the ones that burn unseen. They flicker in silence, hidden in the dark when no one is watching. They don't ask to be witnessed. They simply burn through the pain and turn it into light. When someone hurts an Aries, you won't see tears falling in front of you. You won't hear them begging, blaming, or lashing out. No, they step back not because they are weak, but because they're entering a space that no one else is allowed to walk into, the space of rebirth. In quiet solitude, they peel away layers of hurt like shedding old skin, and throw the remains of that pain into a fire so sacred, it forges a new version of themselves. One that no longer needs your presence to feel whole. One that doesn't require love to remember their worth. An Aries who once loved you with all their fire now learns to love themselves with a heart that once gasped for air. And maybe you'll only realize that when it's already too late, when the person you thought would always forgive has vanished from your life without a trace, when they no longer speak your name in their story, because they've learned how to stand without ever looking back. See, people often mistake revenge for strength, but Aries doesn't do revenge. It's not even in their vocabulary. They know better. Revenge keeps you stuck in an old loop. But rebirth is freedom. And in that freedom, they don't just step into a new look. They step into a new soul, tougher, gentler, at peace. You see, Aries doesn't need to prove a thing. They only need to live in alignment with the fire that already burns within them. And that is what makes them unbreakable. But you know what's most beautiful? When a soul that's been shattered learns how to rise again. Without resentment, they become a lighthouse for those still crawling through the dark. Maybe you're there now. Maybe you're the one feeling betrayed, misunderstood, or crushed by something too heavy to name. And if you're Aries, please remember this. Rebirth is not the end. It's the beginning, one that glows, brighter than anything you've ever imagined. And somewhere along that journey, you'll fall silent. Not because you've run out of things to say, but because you've finally understood. That silence can sometimes be the loudest answer to what no longer deserves your voice. And when that silence begins to ripple outward, it doesn't just leave people speechless, it calls the universe to attention, because a warrior of light has chosen peace, and karma will speak on your behalf. In that sacred stillness, a new kind of light begins to bloom. A doorway quietly opens, not with sound, but with weight. And in that space, you no longer need to shout to be heard, because silence has become the sound that reaches deepest into the hearts of those who once lost you. So listen closely, because what comes next won't arrive with noise. It will arrive with the most miraculous silence your soul has ever known. Sometimes what hurts a soul the most is not the harsh words, not the fiery arguments, but silence. A silence so thick, so deep, it feels like the last bit of light was just swallowed by a room called trust. When it comes to Aries, people expect an instant reaction. They assume rage, fire, loudness, just like the element they were born under. But here's the thing, that only happens when they still care, when they still love you enough to respond. But when the pain crosses a line even they no longer want to define, they don't scream, they don't fight, they go quiet. And in that moment, you'll feel something sink into the pit of your stomach. Something primal, something terrifying. Because when an Aries chooses silence, they're not trying to confuse you. They're not playing games. They're done speaking, done explaining. Silence becomes their final language, their last declaration without needing any words. It's when they look at you, not with anger, but with eyes that have stopped burning. Eyes that once said, "I'll walk with you to the end," now whisper something invisible. "I'm done." People ask, why don't Aries say goodbye more clearly? Why not end it with a tear, a letter, or some dramatic closing scene? Because for them, silence is the last safe place. There are no more words worth saying, no more explanations owed. They gave you countless chances to hear them and you didn't, so now, the universe will speak for them. You'll notice it in fleeting moments. No more check-ins, no more birthday texts, no more warmth in places you didn't even realize were being held. That is the absence of an Aries who once showed up for you. And what stings the most is realizing you thought they'd always be there, no matter what, but they weren't your shadow, they were your light. And once that light pulls back, the darkness it leaves behind is not something you can replace. If you ever had the honor of hearing an Aries tell you a story, of seeing them laugh with their whole heart, of being trusted with their time, then know this: you were chosen. And if, one day, all that remains between you is silence, it means they've chosen themselves. Love to Aries is not about enduring. They won't stick around out of emotional obligation. When they feel their worth is being diminished, when their honesty gets called too much, they will quietly remove themselves and take with them a presence that once gave your life meaning. Because not everyone understands that the true presence of someone who loves with their whole being is a kind of magic, and when that magic leaves, everything else becomes noise. An Aries world doesn't collapse for anyone, it just shifts direction, reorients toward a different sun. And in those silences where you think no one's listening, the universe is preparing something stronger, softer, and infinitely wiser. Something begins to stir when silence is no longer a void but a bridge, a path leading you back to where trust is reborn. And there, we no longer speak of what was lost. We speak of what remains, a heart that never stopped burning, just learning how to walk again, this time toward the deeper light inside itself. There are goodbyes that never come with words, no letters, no promises of one last meeting. They just happen quietly, like the sun slipping beneath the horizon without needing to tell the world it's gone. That's how an Aries leaves. No drama, no noise, but somehow the entire room feels dimmer, like a familiar light has quietly disappeared. Aries can forgive more times than you'd think. They're generous with second chances because their heart burns warm and they still believe people can do better. But when trust is torn, over and over again, when cracks become fractures too deep to repair, they choose a path with no return, no final conversation, no one last attempt to hold on, just silence and a fading outline of someone who once lit up your world. They don't leave because they stopped loving. In truth, it's often because they loved too much. They stayed far too long, gave far too much, only to realize they were slowly losing themselves. And when their heart no longer feels seen, when it no longer feels safe, they pull back their flame and tuck it quietly, deep within. Like a warrior walking away from battle, not because they lost, but because they no longer see a reason to fight. If you've ever been loved by an Aries, truly loved, their leaving will leave a sky-wide emptiness behind. Like a room once drenched in sunlight, now shadowed by bare walls and long, lonely echoes. You'll notice it in things you once took for granted, the check-in texts, the midnight encouragement, the laughter that lit up your kitchen, all gone, and no one can quite fill that absence. What makes it harder is knowing you can't call them back, because when they walk away, they don't look back, not out of spite, but because they've let go to begin healing, let go to reclaim the peace they deserve. And when they find that peace, when they find a new light to follow, you'll only be able to watch from a distance. Sometimes it takes loss to understand the worth of what we had, but regret doesn't bring an Aries back. They've already learned how to close the door on anything that no longer feeds their soul. Their strength lies in choosing forward motion, even when it means leaving behind memories that once burned bright. And when you're left standing in the stillness, something in you will feel it. No more footsteps echoing in your hallway, no more warmth waiting by the door, just quiet and a strange kind of emptiness that reminds you that light no longer belongs to you. But listen closely, because this emptiness is not the end. It's the start of a new chapter, one where you begin to reflect, where the lesson doesn't come from advice but from loss, quiet loss. And somewhere in that stream of silence, something is waiting to be revealed, like a current pulsing just beneath the surface, ready to lead you to a new horizon, one where deeper truths are waiting just ahead. When someone walks away, we often think they've taken all the anger and pain with them, but with Aries, it doesn't disappear the way you'd expect. They don't hold on to rage, they don't build walls of resentment, they leave all of that behind, except for the lesson. Aries doesn't hold grudges, not because forgiveness comes easy, but because they understand something deeper. The heaviest burden isn't the loss, it's the repetition. They won't allow the same wound to return in a different form from a different face at a different time. The scar you left on them won't be ripped open, it'll be kept, like a map. A quiet compass to guide them next time so they don't lose themselves again. They won't come back to remind you of your mistakes, but they'll remember not out of hate but because they've learned. They've learned to read what's unspoken in your eyes. They've learned to hear the silence between your words. They've learned to feel the truth you never had the courage to say, and they quietly begin to change. The way they live, the way they love, the way they trust. You won't see revenge. There won't be a scene to make you hurt. No curses, no complaints, just a silence filled with growth. Aries turns pain into wisdom, and in that sacred space within them, once a wasteland after the storm, they begin to rebuild. Not with bricks of bitterness, but with gentle lines of self-respect and healthy boundaries. Strange, isn't it? Someone once so full of fire, so wildly alive with passion and belief, now walks quietly, with calm. Not because they've changed, but because they've awakened. They know. Forgiveness doesn't mean letting it happen again, and letting go of hatred doesn't mean there's still a place for you in their heart. The memory stays, but it won't be spoken, because speaking it aloud would only reopen the wound. For Aries, the greatest wisdom is knowing when to walk away in peace. No final words, no apologies needed, no one left to convince. The lesson has already been learned, and like every warrior who once fell, they rise again, not rushing, not forcing, but steady and sure. So if you were once close to an Aries and you hurt them, don't be surprised. If one day they walk away without a backward glance, that's not coldness, it's compassion for themselves, because in the end, those who understand their limits don't need anyone else to draw the line for them. Those who have learned through pain don't need to suffer again, to trust their own intuition. And in that moment when Aries pauses, takes a deep breath, and continues their journey alone, the universe bows its head, not to judge, but to witness. A soul growing stronger, silently, steadily. Like the passing of winter, no one hears spring arrive. But then, in the first morning light, a small seed begins to bloom. No questions asked, just the quiet knowing it's time to live differently. And as those gentle rays spread outward, they carry something deeper than forgiveness. Something that softens the air, as if the past has finally closed and a new chapter has already begun. Do you know what truly sets Aries apart? It's not the outbursts. It's not the fire they carry. It's the way they cry in silence. They'll smile when you're around. They'll be twice as strong just so you won't have to worry, even when they're breaking into pieces on the inside. You won't see them cry, not because they don't feel pain, but because they've gotten used to holding it all in for far too long. Aries is born under the sign of the warrior, but no one ever asks, when do warriors cry? No one wonders if the strongest one in the room ever collapses alone in a dark space where no one's listening. But the universe knows. It sees everything. It sees the moment they sit alone at the end of the day, hands clutched to their chest, trying to stop the sobs from shaking their ribs. It sees them write long messages, only to delete them before hitting send. It sees their eyes staring into the mirror, searching for a version of themselves beneath layers of unspoken wounds. And still, they rise, without comfort, without needing to be understood. They stitch their heart back together, with hands already full of scars. They wipe their own tears like a sacred ritual of self-respect. You'll think they've moved on. You'll believe they're fine because they don't complain. They don't ask for anything. But what you don't see are the sleepless nights behind them. The mornings where getting out of bed requires more willpower than hope. And just when you think it's all behind you, when you breathe easy, believing there were no real consequences, that's when karma begins to write the first lines in its book of balance, not with rage, but with reflection of the loneliness you left behind, reflection of the coldness you once brushed off as not a big deal, reflection of the eyes that once lit up for you, now silent with nothing left to say. The universe doesn't need to shout. It simply places you in the same space where Aries once stood, unseen, unchosen, misunderstood, and then you'll feel something real, a quiet emptiness, as if someone just took away something you'll never get back. To Aries, tears are not a weapon. They're the thing they guard most, because when they cry in front of someone, it means they chose to trust, and when that trust is broken, the tears don't fall as water, they fall as stone. Deep inside, you may never see those tears, but one day you'll feel them in the imbalance you created. And when the darkness circles back, it won't ask if you're ready. It'll simply whisper, it's time to feel what you never saw. Like rain falling in the middle of the night, you can't see the drops, but you can hear them tapping cold against the rooftop. And deep down, you know something is being washed clean. And when that long night fades, the dawn won't arrive with fanfare. It will come, like a breath, soft, a new light, quietly leading the way to the next chapter where the heart isn't shattered anymore, but slowly, quietly, learning how to open again. Not for anyone else, but for itself. People often look at Aries and only see the tough shell. They see someone independent, fierce, ready to face anything with no need for protection. They see fire. They see strength. They see someone who looks unbreakable. But what most never pause to see is what lies underneath. Beneath that fearless spirit is a heart still holding the innocence of someone falling in love for the very first time. A heart with no armor, no defenses, just the raw instinct to give with full trust and childlike vulnerability. Aries doesn't love with strategy, they love with their soul. They don't keep a piece of themselves hidden when their heart opens. Every glance, every little thing they remember about you was held close by a spirit that never once calculated. So when someone hurts an Aries, it's not just a wound. Something deeper is lost. They lose a piece of that bright, hopeful lens that once let them believe love is real. And a piece of that purity shatters. You may not notice right away. They'll still smile, still pretend they are okay, still walk forward like nothing could touch them. But somewhere inside, a door quietly closes. A thin layer of frost forms on what once felt like an endless spring. What you lost wasn't just a relationship. It was the purest thing the universe ever placed in your hands, a heart that loved with honesty, trusted with courage, and gave without ever asking for anything in return. The heart of an Aries is a gift, one not everyone deserves, and once you lose it, you don't just lose their light. You lose the rare chance to touch something sacred, a kind of faith that still survives in a world full of doubt. Not everyone sees the beauty in simplicity. Not everyone understands that innocence in love isn't weakness. It's a kind of bravery that aches to witness. Because only hearts that have been broken and still choose to love again truly understand the value of that untouched tenderness. And when you lose that, the universe won't punish you with rage. It simply reclaims what you failed to honor and lets you wander, searching for that same feeling in people who may seem similar, but never are, because no one else will ever love you the way an Aries once did, believing you were their whole world. And then one day in the quiet, you'll feel it, that something once lost will not return, like a clear spring that dries up after the drought, like a crescent moon that fades and never becomes full again, like a gaze that once lit up just for you, now sealed away in memory. And from that moment, where that original, pure love ends, a new story will begin, slowly, gently, as if the universe is whispering to them. You gave away the most beautiful part of you. Now, it's time to learn how to keep something for yourself. Not everyone notices the moment. An Aries decides to leave your life because they don't slam doors, they don't yell, they don't make a dramatic exit like in some emotional movie. They just disappear quietly, softly, like a breeze slipping through an open window. No goodbye. No final text, no clear reason for you to hold on. That silence is their final word, not out of anger, not even out of love, but because they've come to understand. Their presence in your world no longer holds value, so they pull back not to cause chaos, but to create space. Aries is a fire that knows when to withdraw, when its warmth is no longer wanted. They don't need to scream to be heard. They don't need to prove how deeply they once loved you. They simply dim their light and let the darkness speak for itself. You'll start to feel it when no one asks if you've eaten, when the laughter that once lit up the room fades into long, unfamiliar silence, when comfort becomes memory and suddenly you realize you're alone. Aries doesn't walk away to hurt you. They're not punishing you. They're not playing games. They're protecting themselves. They once gave you their time, their presence, their loyalty, and a love that asked for nothing in return. And when you stopped valuing it, they didn't explode. They simply disappeared. The distance they created isn't a wall. It's a quiet place where you can finally hear your own echo, the sound of things unsaid, the sound of moments lost, the sound of something sacred that once lived between you, now living only in memory. No one leaves more gently than a soul that once loved you fully, and no one leaves behind a silence quite like theirs. You'll see them still smiling, still moving forward, but their eyes, the ones that used to look at you like you were the world, they're now facing elsewhere. Not everyone deserves to keep the light forever, and Aries knows when to light someone else's fire and when to keep that warmth for themselves, because one day they understand love cannot be begged, respect cannot be demanded, and presence should never be taken for granted. You won't see their rage, but you will feel their absence in the quiet of the night, in the message you never sent, in the porch light that never turns on again. And if you're quiet enough, if you're honest with yourself, you'll realize it wasn't them who hurt you. It was you who didn't cherish the one who chose to stay in silence. Sometimes, distance is the last act of kindness they can give you. And from that space, where silence becomes a lesson, where memory replaces blame, a new door opens, one that leads you somewhere deeper, where love is no longer driven by impulse but by self-respect. There's one truth about Aries, that not everyone has the courage to face. They don't need you to survive. They don't need anyone to feel complete. They were born to walk alone, to light their own fire without waiting for someone else to strike the match. They're the kind of soul who can sit quietly in a coffee shop, travel solo to unfamiliar places, stand tall in a world full of pain and still say, "I'll be okay." And because they don't need when they choose you, it's sacred. Not because they need someone to lean on, not because they fear being alone, but because they saw you as worthy of stepping into a world they've fiercely protected. A world built on trust, loyalty, and a light not everyone gets the privilege to touch. They chose you like choosing a shelter in the middle of a storm they could survive on their own. They chose you like choosing a moon to gaze at during sleepless nights, even though they could walk just fine without anyone else's light. It was a choice, not an obligation, not a need. And because it was a choice, once they stopped choosing, nothing can make them stay. No apology, no tears, not even the promises they once believed in. When they step back, it's because their heart has realized the light within them is slowly being dimmed by the shadow of someone they once trusted to be safe. What's lost isn't just someone to laugh with, to talk to at midnight, or to tag in a memory. What's lost is the chance to walk beside a powerful, emotional soul, privilege of seeing them before they put their armor back on. The miracle of being loved by someone who didn't need anyone but still chose you. And when that's gone, it's not just a space they leave behind. It's a hollow, a crack in your mind that slowly widens, because nothing else can fill the place they once touched with pure, unconditional honesty. Not everyone understands being needed is not the same as being chosen. Chosen through hard days, through weary nights, through moments of silence and distance, and once that choice is revoked, you'll realize what you once assumed was permanent was actually a gift you never knew how to hold. Aries doesn't leave to hurt anyone. They leave when they feel there's no reason to stay, no more joy, no more connection, no more sense that their love is valued. And when you see them turn their back, don't run after them, because what needs changing isn't the direction of their steps, but the distance you unknowingly created between you. And someday, when the night is quiet enough to hear your soul, you'll understand the most precious thing isn't the people who need you, but the ones who once chose you, even though they didn't need anyone at all. And from the moment that choice fades, a new door gently opens, a place where all relationships begin with respect and end the moment the heart is no longer held in the right hands. Not everyone believes in karma, but maybe every soul that's ever heard an Aries has felt something shift, a sudden reversal, a deep silence, a quiet sense that something has left and it's never coming back. For some, karma arrives slowly like an autumn river drifting through time, but for Aries, it strikes like thunder in a clear sky. No warning, no mercy, no negotiation. The universe doesn't wait long to correct the imbalance when a warrior of light has been betrayed, because Aries isn't just a person. They are the embodiment of life force, of fearless belief, of untamed courage. They love like there's no tomorrow. They believe like their heart's never been broken. And they give away a light that they themselves paid a high price to carry. So when you hurt an Aries, you don't just wound a human being. You tilt the scale of something far more sacred, faith in the goodness of this world. And when that balance is broken, the universe responds, not with rage, but with removal. The light you once received from them dims. Warmth that once held you steady through quiet storms disappears. The trust that kept you grounded when you couldn't trust yourself slowly fades away. Everything around you may still look the same, but inside there's emptiness, because their light no longer guides you. And when you try to find that feeling in someone else, you'll realize no one has it. You'll try to hold on to what once felt real, but by then, it's too late. Aries doesn't punish. They don't chase revenge. They don't prove anything. They simply pull back their energy. And once they do, the universe takes care of the rest. Not through obvious pain, but through absence growing louder with time. One morning, you'll wake up and there's no one left to really hear you. One rainy afternoon, and no one texts to ask if you've made it home. One birthday, and no more messages from the one who always remembered. That is karma. No sound, no signal, just a knowing that something sacred has ended. And you can't go back to where it once lived. But if you're an Aries listening to this, I want you to know something. Karma isn't here to take revenge for you. It's here to set you free. You don't need to go back and demand justice, because justice is already on its way softly, deeply, through your growth, through your peace, through the better things that are being prepared for you just ahead. You only need to keep walking, carry your light, hold on to your noble nature, the warrior who never lets pain kill kindness, the fire that never stops burning even when someone tried to blow it out, because you are Aries. You weren't born to be understood by everyone. You were born to burn brightly, to love wildly, to fail without shame, and to rise again stronger every time the world tries to knock you down. Thank you for walking with me this far. If you're hearing this from a quiet place right now, take a deep breath. You're still here, and your light, it's still burning. I'll meet you again in a deeper, warmer story, where every part of the Aries soul is heard, healed, and allowed to shine, just as it was meant to from the moment you arrived in this world. Goodbye for now, flame of March. Keep burning in the way only you know how.